Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 stages of retirement. So I'm going to be sharing my screen with you and taking you through a little journey of what it would be like to be retired in the future. Okay. I'm Linda Levesque, and my partner, Dan Farron, are senior investment advisors at levesquewealthplanning. And we specialize in retirement. We've been doing it for many, many years. And so we want to share our expertise with you. So I want you to look at this activity list. And these are activities that you may have done throughout your life. And if you just take a moment and go through, and if you can print off the list, that would be great. But just in case you can't, take a piece of paper and a pen and actually write down some of the things that you used to do or that you still do right now, because everybody's at a different age and a different stage of their life. So I'm just going to give you a minute or so and just very quickly, in a little bit of your shorthand, write down some of the activities. And if you really want to do this, seriously, we're going to be going through a number of these slides, but what you might want to do is write down 10 of the activities that you do now or that you have done in the past, things that you really enjoyed. So because this is on YouTube, you can actually pause this and look at the list. Now, I want you to imagine that you're 65 years old. Some of you may be there right now, and some of you may not be. So think of 3 activities that you may have done in the past when you were younger that you are no longer able to do. Cross off those lists, off 3 of the things that you used to do that now that you're 65 or older, you no longer do. Now, look at the list again. And again, you can put this on pause while you're looking at the list. And imagine that you're 75 years old. Cross 3 more activities off your list that you can no longer do that you may have enjoyed in the past. Again, have a look at that list. Now imagine you're 85 years old or older. My mother's 90, so a lot of you could be. We're living much longer now. But think of 3 more activities that you can no longer do. All of these activities. Now, imagine your reaction. Things that you did in the past that you can no longer do. The previous definition of a retired individual was someone that was 55 years old or older. They were not in the labor force any longer, but they were receiving at least 50% or more of the total income from retirement plans. It used to be simple to retire. Life expectancy was short. As I said, my mother's 90 right now. My father died at age 50, but I remember a lot of people that were retiring in their early to mid 60s, and within a couple of years, they were dead. It's very different today. So most people will underestimate how long a retirement they need to plan for. And it depends on what you like to do, because some of those activities you can still do now, but it might cost money. And if you want to continue because you have the time, you need a plan for it. But how long? We don't know. In 2022, we have a new definition of retirement. The definition of retirement is really about deciding the level of economic inactivity. We have a lot of people that are retiring just because they can. So that means they may not be working at their full-time job, but what they may do is decide to take a pay cut and go work doing something that they really enjoy, that they don't find as stressful, but just enjoyable. So you have to think of retirement as a journey, not a destination. Baby boomers want to live more balanced and fulfilled lives, filled with a variety of activities. And you saw from the list, there's probably a lot more that we haven't thought about that you may be doing. The problem is most people don't know exactly what balanced and fulfilled means or how it translates into everyday life. So there's 5 risks to retirement income. You could outlive your money. Maybe you're taking out too much money in the early years. What about inflation? Inflation right now is starting to run rampant. Since we've been going through almost 2 years of COVID, prices have skyrocketed in almost every area of your life. How are your investments, the asset allocation? Because if it's all in guaranteed income and daily interest and bonds, you definitely could outlive your money. And healthcare. A lot of things are being cut by the government, which means there's more of a burden on you to provide the money. So the longer you live, the greater the chance of outliving your money. Many baby boomers are unprepared for the challenge of retirement spending and the longevity risk. And this is a situation in which individuals outlive their retirement finances. There was a study done in 2005 by the Society of Actuaries that suggests 2/3 of retirees underestimate life expectancy, the average life expectancy. Because even now you're going to see statistics, and even though it's longer now, they still show the average as late 70s for men and 80s for women. But I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people in their late 80s into their 90s and pushing 100. A number of years ago, my oldest client that passed away was 101. 101. Think about that. That was a number of years ago. And now, if you look around and you go to retirement homes, if you know anybody in retirement homes, you're going to start seeing that there's more and more people living to be 100 or longer. That's a long time to plan for, especially if you retire in your 50s. Think about it. You could be retired longer than you actually worked. But that also means you have the burden to provide a comfortable lifestyle for your whole entire life. So what baby boomers are doing now, they're in transition to some form of inactivity that requires a different approach to retirement income planning. Because as I said, retirement may be 30 years or longer. And for a lot of you, that means that you'll be in retirement much longer than when you worked. So if you look at this statistical graph, a person that's age 80 right now, if they're a male, have at least a fifth. Now, this is a 65-year-old now. A 65-year-old now male has a 55% chance he's going to live to be age 80. But he's got a 33% chance that he's going to live to be 85, and at least a 15% chance he's going to live to 90. But with females, because we already have always tended to outlive the females, 71% will reach age 80. 53% of women will reach 85, and at least 30% will reach 90. And as I said, my own mother is 90. In June, she's going to be 91. And in actual fact, she really doesn't have any health issues. She's not really on medication for anything. So she has a very good chance to live to be at least 100. But if you look at her own family, her mother died in her 50s of a stroke, but her father lived to be mid-70s, which was more statistical back then when he passed away. But if you've got a couple, at least one of them, from the male or the female, at least one, there's an 87% chance that they're going to live to be 80. Out of that couple, 68% chance one of them will be 85. And to 90, you've got a 41% chance one of you will still be alive at age 90. So today, there's a 1 in 3 chance that a 65-year-old male will survive until he's at least 85. But for women, the odds are about 1 in 2. So if you do have elderly parents and being mentally active during retirement, that can increase your chances of living much longer. Now, men, if you want to live much longer, you need to be married, because married men tend to outlive single men. But women, if you're single or divorced, you can increase your chances of living. So if your husband's ticking you off, you tell him if he wants to live long, he wants to make you happy, because you're giving up some of your life because you're not single or divorced. You're actually married, keeping your husband alive. Just a little joke, but it is better because women tend to do well on their own, where men tend to need a partner, a spouse, a companion to live longer. So the expectations in retirement, well, 37% of you are going to expect to maintain at least your pre-retirement lifestyle. More than 1 in 3 that retire don't want to change anything, even though they have less money coming in. Most of the time, they have less money. 36% actually do have realistic expectations that they may have to cut back on certain things that they were doing. But you've got more than 25% of you that have no clue what to expect at retirement. When I was married, my husband said, oh, well, our goal is whatever happens, happens. Now, easier said for him. He had a guaranteed pension. As long as he stayed employed for his 30, 35 years, he knew what he could get at retirement. So he knew what kind of a lifestyle he could have. A lot of people don't have those pensions. It's up to them to save. And so they have no clue if they'll be able to maintain their lifestyle or not. So the 3 stages of retirement is all about how you will live out your retirement years. Life expectancy is steadily rising, and at each stage, it's going to impact your retirement nest egg in a completely different way, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Today's retirees are leaving work earlier, they're living longer, and they're leading more active lives. And if you remember the list of activities, a lot of these things you're still doing. Healthy lifestyles and medical advances continue to push the life expectancy envelope. So let's look at what it would be like at the first stage of retirement. You're somewhere between the ages of 55 and 65. You may be working part-time or not, but most of you will stop by the age of 70. You may be traveling more and spending more time down south, spending the winters as a snowbird. And you may or may not own a second or third property. At one point, I owned 3 properties, but that was because I had, a house on the lake. I had a city dwelling that was close to my office, and I had something, to spend in the southern states because I wanted to escape the Canadian winters. Now I have pared down my lifestyle to have simplicity and gotten rid of the house. Having 2 condominiums is way easier for me, but that's because that's a lifestyle choice. And because I'm still working, I get to do a little bit of the balancing act, but I get to do what I like without having to maintain and have the expenses of 3 properties. If you have a cottage, a place down south, and your principal residence, you could be maintaining 3, but when you're not making the income when you're retired, it may get difficult. But your lifestyle expenses could be up. So stage 1 will usually last until sometime in your 70s. Now, depending on your health, that could have an impact on how long you're going to be in stage 1. Stage 1, sometimes it's just a test run to retirement because you're not really ready to totally give up working. A large percentage of people have not given retirement enough thought, and they find that they're not emotionally ready to retire. Because when you're working, you get a lot of validation. But when you're at home full-time with your spouse, where's the validation coming from? If it's not your boss or your colleagues or your customers or your clients or your whatever it is that you're in that work environment, who validates the work that you're doing? Do you think that your spouse is going to say, oh, good job, honey, you took out the garbage today and I didn't even have to ask you. Well done. I really appreciate it. They may appreciate it, but they might not always tell you. And so when you're at home, you're going to miss some of the validation you got for a job well done when you put out a project, you spearheaded something, you negotiated a good contract, whatever your job was. People will tell you what a great job, or you'll see what a great job you did based on the results of what you've done. I was in a dentist's office one time giving a presentation to a group of dentists in their boardroom, and I happened to walk through the main part of the lobby, and I saw that one of the dentists, and it was a female dentist, and she had this big, beautiful bouquet of flowers, and I asked her if that was, for a special occasion, and she said, actually, it was from one of her patients, from some dental work that she had done for this patient, that wanted to thank her, and they did it, but not just by paying the bill, but giving her flowers because they appreciated the work she did so much. Who's going to do that for you at home? I mean, your partner might bring you flowers and stuff, but it's not necessarily for a job well done. People don't really understand the differences when they're home full time. Sometimes they think that getting to sleep in is enough and they won't miss going to work. But a lot of people start missing their colleagues and feeling important. And it's something you have to think about because it is a mindset to retirement. You just don't do it because you can. Why it's nice to be able to do it is because you plan for it, but you don't have to do it just because you can. So during stage 1, if you haven't done this earlier, is when you find out whether or not you have retired for the right reasons. What's the plan for filling up your time 24/7? And as I said, where are you going to get the recognition from? Have you prepared for the emotional ramifications? I don't know about you, but you'll see a lot of stars. They're going to be, well, Betty White is a prime example, 99 years old when she passed away this year. The thing is, you could say, I'm sure she didn't need to work. but she liked the recognition she got working. How is that going to impact you emotionally if that's something that you didn't realize you needed and you decide to stay home? And you may or may not even have a partner because you could retire and be single. Now, what do you do with your time? Have you failed to appreciate what's going to be left behind? Remember the old Joni Mitchell lyric, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? You retire, you give your notice, you're home. A week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, and then you think, okay, now what? I've slept in, I've stayed up late, I've watched a lot of TV. Now what do I do? And depending on when you retire in the year, ooh, that could be scary, because if you retire in the winter and you're not going away, the winters can be long. If in the summertime, you feel like you're on an extended vacation. Well, this is going to eventually get you to stage 2 of retirement, because that happens at a time when you're tired of traveling or your health insurance becomes too expensive. My friend and I were talking recently, and we were saying how fortunate we were that we didn't have health issues, because a lot of our friends are starting to get health issues right now. That may mean that they may be limited in being able to travel, because if it starts to get too pricey, some people have to just say, you know what, I can't do it anymore. And so you have to stay. We're in whatever country that you're in. We're in Canada, but you know, we like to travel. We're fortunate, but not everybody is. And so in stage 2, sometimes that happens. Now, if you've been traveling a lot or doing other things, you might be just tired of all that. Or it could be that, you know, it's pushed on you because of your health. But sometimes just staying at home, enjoying the grandchildren, maybe gardening, these are the simple things that make you happy. You're not interested in a whole lot of, you know, traveling and dealing with. Right now, traveling during COVID is not so much fun. Getting tested before you go, getting tested when you come back, maybe when just before you get on a plane, all kinds of things, maybe having to go into quarantine. You're thinking, enough's enough. I don't want to do it. I've done it, been there, don't need it anymore. You found your purpose. You enjoy just taking life easy. But maybe you're depressed and not interested in anything anymore because you technically let your life slip away. You forgot to plan. There is this bright side to this. During stage 2, your expenses actually tend to go down. If you're not spending money on health insurance and traveling and all of that other stuff, your bank account tends to go up. Now, we're actually just not decrease because you're not spending it. So stage 2 usually allows you to breathe a little easier, knowing that your nest egg is not depleting as rapidly as it was in stage 1. Because when you retire in stage 1 and you're young and you're still healthy and active, there's so many things you want to do, those things tend to cost money. But when you're just kind of laying low in stage 2, you're not spending a lot of money anymore. But unfortunately, stage 2 will bring you to stage 3. So just when you thought you'd have enough for retirement, doesn't matter how long you live, stage 3 comes along. In stage 3, older people have a very unrealistic understanding about the likelihood of frailty for them. So even an 87-year-old who is a fall away from being frail and losing quality of life and independence will not say, I am frail. And I can't even stress this enough, because my mother was 87 years old when she fell and broke her hip. As if that wasn't bad enough. My mother was healthy, walking, going out, doing all the things that she was doing, not all the things, but you know, for an 87-year-old, she was in really good health. And she had to have an operation. was starting to recover very, very nicely from her hip operation when she slipped and fell in the bathtub. And now my 90-year-old mother is using a walker. Her legs just don't seem to want to support her anymore. That was 3 years ago when that all happened. And before she fell and broke her hip, my mother never once thought she was old and frail. And she didn't look old and frail. She doesn't look old now, but she is very frail. You have to think about that, because things will happen and change in a heartbeat. So for anyone to think that they're going to be living through 30 years of retirement or more without health issues, I think they're dreaming. Because no matter how healthy you are, something tends to happen. And if you look around at your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, old colleagues, you're going to see for yourself. But healthy living should be one of the top priorities to reduce the aging and the health-related expenses. Because some people need, I'll say, the personal care workers coming to help keep them in their own home. Some of it will be provided by the government, but some of it you have to pay. And I have a friend, his mother gets a lot of care that he has to pay privately. Some of it is government funded, but it's such a small amount that the rest of it is coming from his mother's nest egg. Now, she's one of the lucky ones because she's got it. So she can have that care and she can stay in her own home. But not all of us have that luxury. In stage 3, your health may have deteriorated to the point where you may not be able to even go and pick up the mail, shovel the walkway, or drive a car. Now, Dan and I have a client that, is older and wants to stay in his own home. Luckily, it is a bungalow, but he's at a point in his life where he cannot do any of those things anymore, not even shovel the walkway. And we wouldn't want him to do that either, neither does his family, because if he slipped, he could destroy the rest of what's happening in his life and end up in a retirement home that he's not ready or willing to accept. Because if he's not independent, it's more of a nursing home. If it's an active retirement home, like my mother has chosen to go in after COVID was going on for so long, she needed people, and our mother had suggested, why not go into a retirement home? Now she's loving it. And they've had their restrictions and everything else, but my mother chose to go into this retirement home. But not everybody wants to, and some people prefer to stay at home. But now this client of ours has to pay somebody to shovel the walkway, shovel the driveway, to do the cooking, has somebody else coming in to do the cleaning and the laundry. All of that is coming from his nest egg. So in stage 3, many things may make it impossible for you to keep living as you did when you were in stage 2. What this means, though, is now you have to look at whether you get into home care or you choose to start looking at retirement homes. In either case, in stage 3, your expenses will go up dramatically. Half of you are somewhat or very concerned about having enough money to pay for all of these expenses. Dan and I, mostly me, because Dan focuses on the investments, but I do a lot of retirement plans. And based on the cost of living right now, we put in inflation so that if expenses are going to be going up, we've built it all in, and we see whether or not the client is going to run out of money before they run out of time. It's a scary thing for some people. And if you haven't planned, how do you do it now? Now you got to make the best of your life and the monies that you have right now. And with interest rates at an all-time low, it's not like you're making money in a GIC, a bond, or a daily interest savings account. Well, that means that you're probably going to have to deplete your money much faster because it's not growing. And with inflation and taxes, you're making negative returns. So once you have made the decision that you will go into a retirement home, you know for sure that your expenses are going to go up and will be in the range of $1,700 to $7,000 plus the extras. My sister's father-in-law, or it's complicated, but anyway, it's her husband's ex-father-in-law. Regardless of that, his father-in-law is in a retirement home. He pays close to $7,000, and everything he wants is an add-on. It's like 7,000 plus, 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 plus. Sometimes you go to hotels and they have a charge for everything extra. Just the room is the basic cost, and then everything else you want is an extra. Well, that's how his retirement home is. If you go and find something because your budget doesn't allow you to pay $7,000 for the one that you would like to go in, $1,700 might get you a shared room. Now imagine being older and having to share your room. What happens if the person that you're sharing the room with is a snorer and keeps you up all night? Or they're always getting company, but you have no privacy now. It's not ideal. Now, it's not ideal, but if that's the only thing in your budget, because that's all you plan for, it's not the worst thing either, because you still have a roof over your head and 3 meals a day. But on average, you're going to find that, I'll say a decent retirement home is going to be in the $3,000 to $3,500 range. But for a lot of you, if you don't have pensions, $3,000 to $3,500 might mean that you're going to have to rely on your children if they have the money to supplement. Because not everybody retires and has a pool of money that they can draw that kind of money out just to pay for their living expenses. So you have to think about that, because you might not be there now and you still have time to plan. So the level of your care will vary depending on whether or not you're in a retirement home and the assisted living, because if you're in a retirement home, you have to pay for the extra care. If you're in more or less a nursing home, the nursing is pretty well included. But how you live, the option of where and what you can do, and if it's staying home or going into a retired home or an assisted living, depends on the money that you save, the money that you plan for. And if you're lucky enough to have a house, especially in, I'm going to say, the GTA area, but say you're even outside of the Toronto area, your house still could have a lot of equity, which will help subsidize whatever monies you have. But again, not all retirees, having raised children and doing what they've done, have a house that they can sell. But a lot of them don't want to leave their home anyway, because that's where the family grew up. That's where they want to stay. That's where the memories are. So if you don't have that and you don't want to, because in the old days of doing this, I used to get people say, no, my house is going to be my retirement plan. And now 30 years later, that people are saying, well, I don't want to sell my house. I don't want to move. Why would I want to do that? Well, you didn't save, and the only money you have left is the equity in your house. Sometimes there's no choice. So the gap between those that can afford residence that meet their current or future needs and those that do not is growing significantly. And what is happening is that where you might want to go, there may be a waiting list for 2 or 3 years. Usually though, those are also the places where it's going to cost you money. Now, if they're a lot more money, those are the places where you can usually get a room or an apartment, because not a lot of people can afford the really expensive retirement homes. But if you're sort of in that mid-range where it's a really decent place, the lists are long because it's affordable but really nice. So everybody wants to go. And because the baby boomers are such a large percentage, it's going to get more and more difficult unless you've got money. And then it gives you choice. And then, of course, you know, you got women, they have more chronic illnesses than men. And that could be an issue, because I do know a lot of women with a lot of problems. Men tend to die earlier, but because women are alive, they're the ones that have to suffer with these illnesses. So are you prepared for retirement? And you might be younger thinking, oh, I got a lot of years yet. If you ask anybody just a little bit older than you, they're going to tell you that life is flying by. So before you know it, you could have the option of retirement. Dan and I have some clients now that, because of COVID and other circumstances, they're actually being offered packages now to retire in their 50s, early 50s. Well, if you've planned for it, it's not going to hurt you financially, probably, but you might not be emotionally ready to even leave. So you have to be prepared for retirement regardless of your age. And if you're already retired, then you got to keep on thinking about what it is you're going to do with all that time, because you still might have another 10, 20, 30 years in retirement. So it presents two challenges. What readiness means, but also how to get there. But you've got to think about what it means to you first in retirement. We'll figure out the how once we know what it means, what you'd like to do, how you want to live. So ask yourself, can I afford to retire? Can I afford to retire in the lifestyle of my choice? That's the second question you have to ask yourself. Because maybe you can retire, but will it be in the lifestyle that you want? Or will it be dictated because of the lack of finances? So you've got to do some homework, and you have to start listing the things that you want and would like to do. And then you start calculating the cost of what these things cost today. Because you know it's not going to be cheaper tomorrow. For the most part, the things that you like doing today, those costs will just continue to go up, like golfing, traveling, the air, you know, flights. It's like unbelievable what it used to cost compared to what it is today. We can build in the inflation, so don't worry about that. The problem is people don't like doing the legwork, so they underestimate what they need to save. Just continuing to live in your existing home will run you a fair bit when you're not working and drawing a regular paycheck. Because when you're working and the money comes in and it gets deposited to your bank and you have all these expenses going out, you don't think about it. When you're retired, the electric bill comes in, the heating bill comes in, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, it's a lot more than it was last year. Or the property taxes. I've got clients and friends that talk about this all the time. They cannot believe every time they're getting these bills, how much more it's costing them. And groceries, it's gone through the roof. So you got to plan for that. We may be in an exceptional time right now, but if you think about what the prices were before and what they are today, even a car, when you bought your first car, what they are today. You have to plan. You got to do some legwork because you don't want to underestimate what you're going to need to save today. And don't count on an inheritance because your parents also need this money to live. And if you get something bonus, but what happens if they run out of money? You may be helping them, your parents. So making a retirement budget sometimes is an eye-opener for a lot of people because they never thought about what it's actually going to cost them. As Canadians, we're living longer and healthier lives than ever before. And many are dreaming of an early retirement, or you may already be enjoying one. And Dan and I've got a number of clients that have retired because they could, but we're not saying they're happier being retired because sometimes they didn't plan for it. And again, it's not the end all and the be all. So that means that going along, it's got to be a journey. It's not coming to the end of the road. It's just changing the path you're taking. So as a result, the retirement, as I said before, may last 20, 30, even 40 years. And in some cases, people will spend more time in retirement than they did in the workforce. And I can tell you for a fact, my mother was one of the ones that used to work way before it was common for mothers to work. My mother did. We were 7 kids in our family. So my father, asked my mom to go to work, and she did. And my mother wasn't educated, so she ended up working as a waitress. And then when my dad died, and, my mom was left with still 4 children at home, she definitely had to up the ante and find a job that paid more than waitressing. But regardless of all of that, my mother's already been in retirement way longer than she ever did spend working. So in order to prepare for retirement, you've got to answer these questions. When do you want to retire? Do you have an age in mind? Or are you looking to retire in so many years when you've got accumulated a particular amount in your retirement savings, or your pension reaches a certain age factor that, years of service and age, and you get to retire? I mean, what is it for you? What is going to make you want to retire, and when? What do you need to do to retire comfortably? What's the considerations? I mean, I had a client before many years ago that said, well, how much money will I need to retire? And I said, well, what do you want to do in retirement? Because if these are people that want to stay home and watch TV, it doesn't take a lot of money to do that. Just normal expenses and build in inflation. But like if you're a person like me, I want to travel even more. I want to be able to golf, and golfing is not cheap. I want to be able to go out to the theater and do a lot of fun stuff. Well, my retirement might cost a lot more than that couple. How can I tell them how much money they're going to need unless they tell me what they want to consider, what they want to do? It all depends. But you have to think about, take into consideration all the things that now you can do that you couldn't do while you were working. And what are those things going to cost you in today's dollars? Where do you want to live? Maybe you're going to be one of the ones that sell your home and you live at the cottage 6 months and then down south for 6 months. Or maybe you're going to purchase a home now, or maybe you decide that you want to sell the home and just rent. But also, have you budgeted for the additional cost of living and the healthcare? What will you do during retirement? Play golf, ski, travel? I mean, those are just generalist stuff because they're things that a lot of people like to do, but you might have a lot of other things Maybe you're going to start taking art classes and start, doing sculptures or whatever. It could be anything in retirement. Most things have a cost. Who do you want to spend time with? Will you be visiting relatives, joining groups, associations, volunteering? How much money will you need? I have this conversation with one of our clients on a regular basis because her husband happened to pass away a lot younger. He was in retirement, but she expected he would have lived a lot longer. He was healthy before, obviously, he got sick. And so it did throw a wrench into the retirement. But it's kind of like this, you're in retirement, you've saved, you've sacrificed, you raised your family, you want to do stuff. You don't want to have to think about, oh, yeah, maybe I really can't afford to go to the movies this week because I went twice last week, and that's really gonna hurt the budget because I'll actually have to ask for more money out of my savings because it's not enough what I'm getting in. You don't want to be in that position if those are things that you like doing, but you have to plan for it. Now, we do have some clients that just like to spend money, and when you don't think you're going to live as long as you do, because nobody knows, and you keep on spending just because you can, buying a lot of stuff that as you get older, you realize stuff is not important. Memories, relationships, friends, family, all the stuff you accumulated throughout the year. And now you go into a store and, ooh, that's on sale. I could save half price. It's not a sale if you don't need it. Because really, a lot of stuff, if it's closed, where are you going to wear it now? Most people haven't been able to go out anywhere for so long. And the few places you can go when they open up again, I'm sure there's a closet full of things that you have that you can wear that you haven't. But I know it's nice sometimes buying the new stuff. But think about the retirement, creating the memories, doing the fun stuff with your family and friends, because you don't know when it's going to be taken away. So before, if you had your 100% income while working, and now they say it used to be around 60 or 70%. That was a conventional number because retirements weren't that long. But because we're living much longer, you almost need about 80% on average. If you're two people, 75% for a couple, because housing is going to cost the same whether there's one person or two people in there. But your expenses go up as a single person because you're paying for everything on your own. So maybe you need almost 85%. How much have you saved so far? Are you saving on a regular basis? Because the earlier you start, the less money you have to put away. The later you start, the more money you need to put in to catch up. What's your investment style? If you're so afraid of the markets because they go up and down, which is a normal thing, the prices are not yours on your statement until you're ready to sell. So if the markets are going down, but you're not taking money out, who cares? But if you're so afraid of these fluctuations and you put all your money in the bank, in your mattress, buying a GIC, you could run out of money again before you run out of life. Where will your retirement income come from? Maybe you've got some passive income like rental property, the government plans, some savings plans. Maybe you have a pension plan. Today, people are barely saving enough to replace their income, and they're not even thinking about the additional cost for health. Healthcare is increasing, and it's looking like we're headed in the direction of privatization. Privatization is good and bad. There's pros and cons to both. But the good is if you have the money, you could be pushed up the list because you can go and pay for it. The con is If you don't have the money and you need surgery and you're at the bottom of the list because priorities or somebody else or something else, like what's been happening with COVID, you could end up having to suffer longer or die because you were waiting. Money for healthcare is something to think about now. So if you've got the cash, you could be bumped up only because you're prepared to pay and there's a doctor that's willing to do it. Are you prepared? Are you planning right now for the additional costs associated with the healthcare? So you could be asking yourself, where do you start? Well, if you're working, RSPs are a good place to say, defer some of your taxes. Do you maximize your contributions? What about insurance? If something happened, whether you're off on a disability because you were skating or shoveling the driveway and you fell and all of a sudden you broke your leg and you can't work, do you have disability insurance? What happens if you get a critical illness? And I don't know one person who doesn't know at least one person who hasn't gotten a critical illness. Do you have insurance for that? How about maybe a long-term care insurance to subsidize that you don't have to drain all of your nest egg in order to live in a decent place? What about life insurance? If you die prematurely and you still have a partner to support, or even a family. Do you have an emergency fund? Nothing can derail your retirement goals faster than some major emergency where all of a sudden now you got to start draining the savings that you put away for your retirement. Before, it used to be 3 to 6 months of whatever it is that you made in a month that you put away for an emergency. And this is not money for an education. It's not money for traveling. This is for a real emergency so that you didn't derail your retirement plans. But now, after going through COVID, minimum you should be considering is 6 to 12 months. And knowing that we've been going through what we have close to 2 years now, maybe it would have been nice to have a really nice nest egg for just this type of emergency. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't have crystal balls. And no matter what you think you've planned for, something always springs up. Because who would have ever thought we would have been going through what we've gone through in the past 2 years? So if we can't plan for it, then plan for it. Play on words. Just plan to save for the unexpected. But really, look at your own paperwork and see, do you have enough insurance to cover you if you became disabled? Because not everybody gets hurt at work. Do you have enough life insurance to maintain the lifestyle if your working spouse passes away prematurely? You need to have enough insurance on them. What about the critical illness insurance I talked about? My own sister in her 30s got diagnosed with breast cancer. Who would have thought? It doesn't run in our family, but you don't know. Have you considered long-term care insurance? And this is not an easy insurance even in Canada to buy because it's so expensive that a lot of insurance companies don't even want to offer it now. Have you set up the emergency fund to look after 6 to 12 months worth of expenses? I'm telling you now, it's changed from the 3 to 6 months. Don't even go there. 6 is the absolutely least amount you should have access to cash. But 12 or more months is in your best interest if you can afford to do that. So during the retirement phase, the sequence of returns, the withdrawal rate, and the asset allocation will all impact your retirement plans. Did you understand that? The sequence of returns. If you had retired during 2008, 2009, when we were in a major recession where markets went down for a good period of time, and you had to start drawing out your money, that could impact what you thought was going to be a comfortable retirement and lifestyle because of the sequence of the markets and how much you took out and what asset allocation you had your money in. That's why you need an expert. That's why most people can't do it on their own. Some can, but most can't. And mostly they can't because during market corrections is when people get emotional and they start making the wrong decision because they forget about the long term and they only look at what's going on because there's so much media hype on, oh my God, volatility, you're going to lose everything, blah, blah, blah. This is normal. And like everything else, we don't have the crystal ball, but Dan and I can tell you the markets go up, and we can also tell you the markets go down. We can't tell you how long they'll go up or how much, just like we can't tell you when they start coming down, how long they'll go down and how much they'll go down. But if you're in for the long term, it's not relevant. And the longer you're in the markets, the less relevant the market corrections are. And if you have money, it's the best time to buy because now you get to go and buy things on sale that you really can use. If you have a choice, you do want to avoid retiring at the beginning or in the middle of a bear market. But again, who knows when you're in the middle of a bear market? A bear market could be a week. You don't know. Because of technology, so many things happen a lot quicker. Things go down a lot quicker. That means you can't get out fast enough, and things go back up. So you can't get back in fast enough. But sometimes retirement is thrown at you and you don't have a choice. It's not always in your control. So the average annualized returns is about the time in the markets. It does not matter when you invested, as long as you were invested. And when I talk about that, it's for the long term. But asset allocation is key when accumulating money. The way Dan structures the portfolios is to make sure that you are covered in all areas that you need to be, whether that's sectors or geographically. And then the next thing that Dan will look at is the split between the equity portion and the bonds or fixed income, because this historically will drive the long-term returns. And you need to understand that, because depending on how much risk or how little risk you want will be the weighting. But staying invested, I can't even stress it enough. If your goals are long-term, and I would get asked a lot, how long is long-term? Long-term is forever. Because even if you're retired, it doesn't mean we have to liquidate. We have to keep you going with an income for the rest of your life. Well, if you're retired for 30 or 40 years, that's long-term. You could die in a year, but you could live 40, maybe 50. So it's important that you stay the course, not panic, because time is on your side when you start early and during the accumulation phase. But you have to consider the effect of inflation, what it's going to have as an impact on the retirement savings, because inflation will erode the buying power of your savings. My mother gets a pension. My father died in 1974, and My mother gets a pension from my dad's employer still, but what that pension was in 1974, it's never gone up because my father's pension was not indexed. And now it's like barely pocket change what my mother gets. So of course, financially, it's always been a struggle for her because her money wasn't keeping up with inflation. So if the combination of withdrawals and inflation outstrips the interest rates, drawn in income in the latter stages of retirement may be difficult. So think about this. A stamp today is $1.07. But back in the 70s, and like I said, my dad died in 1974, but in 1976, my mother could buy a stamp at 8 cents. She used to send a lot of Christmas cards. Well, now at $1.07 each, she can't afford to do that anymore. How about if you just went to a restaurant and had a cup of coffee? 25 cents for a coffee. Now you're paying $4 and more for a coffee. I mean, it's amazing what people will pay. People are paying $4 for a bottle of water. In the 70s, who would think you would ever pay for water? You need to plan for inflation because it will have a major impact on the retirement savings. So this is a roadmap to retirement. You got to find out, we need to find out together where you are today. Find out what the goals and objectives are so we can help plan for you to take that right road. What assets you have, what debts you have. Do you have the insurances to protect? Emergency fund? We got to think about all those things. So the battle against poverty, it's not knowledge versus ignorance, but it's rather fear versus faith. You have to have faith that we're going to have a future. So don't get fearful because the markets go down or the media comes on the news and is stressing all the doom and gloom in the world. Good news does not sell. So you're never going to hear all the good stuff. It's always going to be based on your fear. And the more they can put the fear in you, the less faith you have that will actually come out of this okay. And you know what? There's been a lot of good things that have happened. You can't look at all the negative because some people have really done well. And during any type of tragedy or recession or war, whatever it is, there's people that make money and there's people that lose money. But have faith that you have a future. So savers will look back in the past with fear. But investors, they look into the future with faith. And in life, you have to have faith. So can you afford to retire? Can you afford to retire in the lifestyle of your choice? Will you be ready emotionally to retire? We want to thank you for attending the presentation. If you have questions, you want to email us. Dan and I are very happy to acknowledge any of the questions and also to respond to any emails on anything that you would like to know about from the presentation or something you would like to see in the future. Our website is www.levesquewealthplanning.com. Check us out, contact us, book a free complimentary appointment, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.